So we're just gonna do a little more recall. So we're gonna look at each equation. We're going to write, is it what form it is? I know I didn't write that there. What form it is. We're gonna write the key feature we know from it, and we're gonna state the value of the key feature. Okay, so we're gonna take a look at this one, and this is, because there's two brackets, this one is factored form. Okay, and then we will go to the next one first, so we're just gonna name them all first. So this one is standard form, because it has an x squared, an x, and a plane number. And then we'll go to the next one. This one would be, because there's a bracket and a squared, vertex form. Okay, and then we will go back to factored form because there's two brackets, so on and so forth, vertex and standard. So we're not going to do each of these because I want you guys to practice them on your own. So we're going to go to the first one. And what key feature do we find from factored form? So remember, when we have two brackets, factored form gives us the zeros or the x-intercepts. Okay, so our key feature is that we can get our zeros. So our key feature, when we take these, remember, when we take them out of the brackets, they become the opposite. So we have to flip the sign. So this one would become, because it's +1, this becomes a -1. And we have to flip the sign for that one. So when we take this one out of the bracket, it becomes a +3. So our zeros, you can write them two ways. It's -1 and 3, or you can write them -1, 0 and 3, 0. There's a train, I bet you guys can hear that. So when we look at our standard form, what is one of the key features that we know from this one? Well, we know that this last number is the y-intercept. So our y-intercept, where it crosses on the y-axis, sorry about the police cars, guys. The y-intercept is 9, which we can also write 0, 9. I think they're coming closer this way. And then we're going to take a look at vertex form. So vertex is in the name, right? Vertex is going to give us the vertex. And the two numbers that we use are this one and this one. Now, because this is in a bracket, when we bring it out, we have to flip the sign. So it becomes a +3. So our vertex equals +3 and 7. Okay, so you guys are going to do the next three yourselves. Let me just slide this down here. And then we're going to look at something when we have to expand something a little bit more trickier. Okay, so first things first is we can see that there's a number in front of this. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to ignore it for now, and we're going to look at the two brackets. So we're going to do the same thing we just did and factor this out, because remember, BEDMAS, brackets come first. So we're going to write it x + 4 on the top, x - 3 on the side, and then we'll go in and we'll factor them out, or times them. So x times x is x squared, x times 4 is 4x, -3 times x is -3x, and -3 times 4 is negative 12. You guys can use your calculator if you need. And then we take these two and add them together. So negative 3 plus 4x gives us 1x. And then we write our equation out. So we have x squared, so we're gonna go this way, x squared plus 1x minus 12. Okay, so now that we have that, we can't forget about this too. So this was step number 1. Okay, so we found this. Now step number 2 is that we have to sub this in for this. So we have negative 2, and we just found what this equals. So negative 2, and put this one in brackets, 2x plus 1x minus 12. So from here, we have to, because this one is all in brackets, we have to take this number and multiply everything by it. Okay, so what I would recommend is drawing arrows. So you have to multiply that, we have to multiply that, and we have to multiply that. Okay, so we take negative 2 times x squared. So this gives us negative 2x squared. And then we go to the next one, negative 2 times 1x gives us negative 2x. And then negative 2 times negative 12 gives us, because it's two negatives together, it gives us positive 24. And that is our answer. So step 1 is to turn it into standard form. Okay, and then step 2 is to plug it back in, because we just found what this equals in standard form. And then we have to multiply the number in front by the whole thing. Okay, and now we're going to take a look at this one. So what this means here, okay, what this x minus 1 squared means is squared just means it's multiplied by itself. So we have x minus 1 times x minus 1. So it just means that there's 2 of those. And then we have a minus 5. So what do? We take this and we put it over here. So we have x minus 1, x minus 1. So this is our first step. Well, I guess writing that would be our first step, but you know what I mean. And x times x is x squared. X times negative 1 is negative 1x. And negative 1x. And negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1. We take our 2 and we add them together. So negative 1 plus negative 1 gives us negative 2x. So then we write out, going from this way, we have x squared is our first one, negative 2x is our second one, and plus 1. Okay, so now that we found that, we go to step number 2. And we haven't done anything with this 5 yet. We just figured out what that is in standard form. So we can write that in standard form. But we also have to include this minus 5 down here now. So we can take these two numbers, let me just grab this color, because we have a positive 1 and we have a negative 5, and we just math them out. So we have x squared minus 2x, and then 1 minus 5 gives us minus 4. Okay, so these just have an extra step for you guys to do when you are figuring those out. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over a little bit of the trickier ones, and then you can practice on those ones. So what we have here is we have, I don't know if you guys can see it, but it's x minus 3 squared. So remember that equals x minus 3 times x minus 3. It just means that there's two of them. So then we would go through the window method. And put our first one on the top, x minus 3. Second one down the side, and then we go through and we go x times x, which is x squared. X times negative 3, negative 3x. And same thing, x times negative 3 is negative 3x. Negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9. And then we take these and we add them together. So negative 3 plus negative 3, x plus negative 3x gives us negative 6x, and then we write it out. So we have from this way x squared minus 6x plus 9. That's our standard form. So I'm going to let you guys practice the rest of them. And if you have any questions, you're going to ask. Okay? So then, sorry, I'm just sliding this down here. So, we've been practicing expanding, but why in the world would it be helpful? Well, what's the information that we get from this here? From factored form, we get the zeros, right? So our zeros are, since we take these out of the brackets, they change signs. So our positive 8 becomes a negative 8, and our negative 3 becomes a positive 3. So then our zeros are negative 8 and 3. So we have where they cross the x-intercept, or the x line. And then if we take a look at, if we factored it out, and we take a look at our standard form, what do we know? Well, we now know that our y-intercept is 24. Okay, so that's cool. And then when we take a look at vertex form, we know that our vertex can come from vertex form. So it's these two numbers here, and when we take this out of the bracket, it becomes a negative. So our vertex is negative 1 and 2. And then we take a look down here, and once we've factored it out, we know that our y-intercept is positive 1. So that's cool. And then if we add y in front of all of these, we know that it becomes a parabola. So what we're going to do is we're now going to be able to figure out how to start a graph. So what do we know already? Okay, so we know that we can find our zeros instantly, right? So we can find our zeros are, when we take this out, it's negative 3 and positive 1. And we also, sorry, I'm just double checking that it's, okay, so we can put that on the graph. So we're gonna go negative 3, so there's negative 1, 2, and 3. And we know that it's positive 1, so we can put a dot there. So that's cool. We know that our axis of symmetry. So this is one thing you guys are learning right now. Okay, so your axis of symmetry is these two added together. So let me write this for you. So to find your axis of symmetry, it is these two added together, so -3 plus 1 divided by 2. Okay, so to find your axis of symmetry, it's these two added together divided by 2. So that's going to give us -3 plus 1 is -2 over 2, which gives us -1. So we now have our axis of symmetry. So that means that that is our dotted line. So we're going to go to -1, and we're going to put our dotted line here. And so what our dotted line means is that is directly half of our parabola. And then we're going to take our 0 form, and we are going to put it in our windows, so we're going to change it to standard form. Okay, so we're going to go draw our windows. We're going to put number 1 on the top, and our second one on the side. Then we're going to math them out. So x times x is x squared. X times 3 is 3x. -1 times x is -1x. And -1 times 3 is -3. And then we're going to take these and add them together. So -1 plus 3 gives us 2x. So we can now write our y equals x squared plus 2x minus 3. Okay, so we are now given our standard form, and when we have standard form, note, I know this is a lot of information at once and I apologize. We now have our y-intercept. So we can go plot that on here. So our y-intercept is -3, so it is 1, 2, 3. So we can plot that here. So all we're missing is the vertex. So we know that this is part of the vertex. So what we're going to do, this is something new for you guys, so we're going to come up here. So to find the y value of the vertex, we are going to sub our -1, sorry, x equals -1, into this format. We're going to sub it into y equals x plus 3 and x minus 1. So to find our y value of the vertex, so we know our x value of the vertex because we know that it is the same as our axis of symmetry. So we're going to take our x value and plug it back into that equation. So we're going to grab another color and we're going to go y equals, we're going to sub the -1 in for x, -1 plus 3 and -1 minus 1. And then we're going to get -1 plus 3, which is +2. And -1 minus 1 gives us -1. Or sorry, ignore me, -2. And so then, because they're in brackets, they multiply by each other. So 2 times -2 gives us -4. So we now have our y value for the vertex. So our vertex is -1 and -4. Now remember, our vertex is either the highest or lowest point. Okay, so we already know when we look at this equation, it is positive. So we know that it's going to open up. So our vertex is going to be our lowest point on the graph. So if we go to -1 and -4, so -1 and then down to -4, we can plot our point. And now we can draw our parabola. So we have it here, we know that they cross and it goes up like this, and we know it goes up like a cup. And then we can draw the other side. And guess what? We just drew a graph out of our equations. So I'm gonna get you guys to do some practice now, okay? So remember, to find the y value of the vertex, we can use our axis of symmetry and sub it into our factored form. Okay, and to find the axis of symmetry, we just use zeros. So we add them together and we divide it by 2. Okay, so I'm gonna get you guys to practice some, and then we will get back to another part.